I want you said you wanted to hear from the public and get the input so that you can come up with an amendment. Let me just express my concerns about two aspects of this bill. And the first one deals with the buildings. Um, uh, I've seen school corporations who have closed a building, and then the next year they go back and open it up, that building, because they get an increase of students. If you shorten this time to 90 days, that means immediately access to that building, and there's no chance for that local community to make use of that building or come up with some plans for that building, for use of that building, which will be beneficial to the taxpayers who are paying for or have paid for that building.
If I could respond to that just a second, if you ask that question, actually, this would give, and I think those like IPS who's done this would probably say that's an advantage, rather than they have to sit on that property for 2 years, provide for operational cost of operating an unused building, that would shorten it 90 days. What you're not saying, you're saying that the opportunity for a charter to claim that building has been reduced from 2 years to 90 days. That's what we're effectively
saying. So what you're saying, okay, thank you for the clarification. You're saying that they have to make a request for it. Now, do they acquire it at the 91st day?
They have to claim. I have to go look at the details. I don't remember for sure if they have to acquire it the 90th day, but they have to. Currently, under current state law, it's a 2-year window, so it goes on this list for 2 years. I think that's an awful long time.
Well, I thought the 2 years was to allow that school corporation to use it if they needed to use it.
No, the 2-year, once that school corporation has decided they're going to vacate that building, they have to wait 2 years before they can make decisions as to what they want to do with that building.
Okay, but what if they want to sell that building and
under current state law, they can't sell it until that 2-year opportunity for it to be on this list is out there. Now, frankly, there are some, as this law was passed back in probably 2011, 2012, the unused building. And so if you look at the code, what ended up happening is, yes, there is a code site that will say that charter schools have access to property for up to 2 years. There's also a section of administrative code that says that did not get changed, which has caused a conflict in the Indiana Code in terms of what they could do, because the administrative code would allow them to lease, sell, or whatever. So if you go across the state, there are patchworks of places where a school may have decided to do something else and never put it on the unused building list that the state law requires. So if somebody challenged it, I'm sure it can be litigated at that point in time, and they'd have to decide.
So if a school corporation was closing the building and had plans to use it some other ways, then they would not be eligible for a charter school to acquire.
In this,
suppose we're closing the school, but we're going to make it the service center.
Well, then they're technically they're continuing. If they're going to change the purpose, there is some flexibility in terms of what they're. I'll give you an example. IPS, I think, repurposed Northwest, was it? And actually, they changed it to a middle school, but it's also a transportation facility for them. There has been talk by IPS, for instance, to move their admin offices from the Walnut Street location to Broad Ripple. We're trying to provide a lot more clarity in terms of what you can do with that building, when that building would end up appearing on this list, so that it provides clarity for all school districts and would have the opportunity for them to make decisions instead of having a 2-year window where they have to hold out there, kind of taper that down to 90 days and give them the flexibility to have better.
So is that just notification in that 90 days, or they have to do something?
They have to. A charter school has to lay claim to it within the 90 days.
Okay, and then they can hold it for what, forever?
You mean the charter school?
Yeah,
the charter school
they actually do something with it. For example, for example, with some of the housing programs, if you bid for HUD or some of the city programs in Gary, if you acquire a house, you have to do something with that house within 90 days or something. You can't just sit on it. So, what if a charter school says, "Okay, I want this building," and we got 10 of them in Gary, too many for our population, and they say, "Okay," and one of them are, a couple of them are in very undesirable locations. So they say, "Okay, we want this building, but we don't have money to make the improvements. We're not going to do anything immediately. We just letting you know in 90 days that we want it. We claim it as ours. Turn it over to us, and we sit on it."
Well, I would agree with you that one of the problems in the current law is, and this is something I had a discussion with IPS about yesterday, is that you could claim a charter school that has not even been approved could technically, but an organizer is in front of an authorizer could actually claim to the building and tie it up for several years. They may not have the financial ability either to be able to. I mean, like I said, you look to a facility like Broad Ripple, which was designed for 2,800 students, and your projected enrollment is maybe 500. There's no way that it makes logistical sense. So we're trying to fix this problem. Is what we're trying to do in this bill.
Okay, so
Representative Baining, there are on page 19
I was just getting ready to.
C. Yes, it does talk about the time that a
It says that
charter school has
must
to do
begin
something.
to use the building. I just had turned this open for that purpose. For classroom instruction is not later than 2 years after acquiring the building under subsection 2 years after the school. So if you look at page 19,
they can set it on the 2 years in the community and let it be eyesore.
technically, although the school district currently under current law has to leave it there 2 years before they can do anything with it.
I can't imagine myself also, if I may interject, that they would not enter into a lease agreement that bound that charter school to be doing something or paying penalties with that. As one who's leased properties before in a school setting,
What do you mean penalties?
my
What kind of
attorneys would be
penalties?
all over that, of binding him into some
What kind of penalties
financial
would they pay?
penalties
I don't see any penalties
if they
in this
didn't
bill.
meet. There's not in that. I think
But
it would be the
lease
school
agreements
corporation
generally
would do that.
have, lease agreements and that would have
Yeah,
something.
but it's not a lease anymore. They're
Well,
giving it to them for $1.
It depends
not a
on the.
lease.
It depends on the how they decide to move forward with it. It could be a lease as well, or it could be a purchase. It depends on how the school district decides.
The
to move
language in law says that
if you read
it's a
page
lease.
19, the charter school, it talks about during the term of the lease. Read page 19, starting in section C. It talks about during the term of the lease of the charter school closes, cease the school building for classroom instruction. The school building shall be placed on the department's list. Section 4 of this chapter. So it could be a lease agreement. It doesn't say that it has to be a purchase.
But there's other language that says that they can acquire for
Well, there's
$1.
also a purchase option, correct?
I haven't seen the lease language.
It's on page 19, beginning at line 2. If you go down, read down through that, you'll see it. During the term of the lease under this section, line 22, chapter charter school is responsible for the direct expenses related to school leased, including utility, insurance, maintenance. It's all on page 19 that kind of outlines all that.
Okay, it should be put on the department's list under what? On what department's list?
If they just, you're reading, if the term of the lease, the charter school closes or ceases using the school building for classroom instruction, the school building shall be placed on the department's, it gets placed on this list again. So if the charter school would leave and the building is still in the possession of the school district, it gets put back on that list. So another charter could lay claim to it if they so chose.
So you're still letting it sit out there for years.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to streamline it as much as I
know,
can
but
and try and provide access to.
I'm proposing some gaps in it that needs legislative.
Well, I know that, like I said, I intend to work with IPS. I've actually asked them for some language. I know that their intent would be to streamline it, and my intent would be to make this public policy would be applicable for every school district in the state that would provide opportunities, especially when you're talking about buildings for secondary buildings. That I would, for instance, I would suggest that like a Broad Ripple, they may decide to, and I would think that the body would not be opposed to allowing them, as long as they continue to use it for educational purposes in some way, to maybe sell the property to a developer. And in that MOU with the developer, a component of that property has to be an educational facility. It could be an IPS, it could be a charter, but on that footprint, there would be a facility that would provide educational instruction for students in that community, and it would have to be structured in such a way that would be below market rate, so it wouldn't be like I'm building a new building, I'm going to have to pay premium price for it. I mean, I think there's ways that we can give our school districts flexibility, but at the same time meet the threshold of trying to provide access to our charter school community to these buildings that were paid for by the public. That's really the intent, is that why should the public have to pay twice for it?
Okay, may I respectfully suggest that you're talking about IPS, but Gary's inundated with charters as well. And since the state has taken over the Gary system and GT is there as their representative, that you talked with Dr. Pete, who is the emergency manager, because we are doing we're down to 12 schools out of 100, out of 40, and he plans to close some more. And I think it shouldn't be just designed for IPS.
It won't be. I actually have correspondence. The governor's office has DUAB. Courtney is the chair of DUAB, so I definitely have correspondence with the governor's office in regards to this as well.
Okay. And my second concerns deal with this referendum.